Um, let's keep my computer on. Welcome. More. Yes, test. All right. Well, since some more people are coming in, we'll just about start with a little bit of an introduction regarding the subject and regarding yours truly here. Let's make sure I don't get tangled up in stuff. Welcome. First of all, welcome at the conference. It's really good to be here. At least that's my view. I hope you share that view. And we'll have a couple of more days of interesting sessions and great friendly talks with the fantastic Greek organization, by the way. I think these guys really rock. But let's put the formalities aside. Let's get into serious business. This presentation is about Drupal and Piwik. Drupal mostly because it's the example CMS I will represent. Pretty much the presentation is valid for every website, whether PHP based or flat HTML based. It's a tale about cookies and laws, damn laws and statistics, because sometimes these things seem to be invented to simply annoy people. Well, who am I then? I own my own business. I've been doing that for 15 years now. Recently with my wife. I'm also sponsoring this conference. By the way, I think any business who at least gains some financial result by utilizing open source should pay something back. Maybe not by means of money, by means of time, energy, evangelizing. I don't care, just do something back, because the guys and girls making the software really deserve it. I am an open source and open standard enthusiast, which basically explains why I'm here. I have a pretty long history also in advocating open standards in the Dutch government, also the ODF and ODT standards. I used to be a bit active in government field then. Also, I'm a big coffee lover, so if you excuse me once every few seconds, I will take a sip of this tasty beverage before it runs cold. Currently, I'm hired by several companies, Dutch government, pharmaceuticals. One of my personal favorites is the Bachchor Holland, which is a classical choir, which basically shows that you can do just about anything as long as you like what you do and be passionate about what you do, and as long as you make money with it, so that's good. I am also not a legal expert, so this talk is going to be about laws and regulations, but since I do have a pulse, I'm not a lawyer. I mostly am interested in the subject and in the rules and regulations. So the presentation which now follows are purely my own views at this particular matter. It's not necessarily the truth and absolutely not necessarily the truth applicable in every country within the EU, because cookie laws are implemented on a national basis. Of course, there's the European guideline for it, but as usual with these kinds of guidelines, everybody gets to choose what they want and specify what they don't. But basically, this talk is also about evading these rules, or better, use a product called Piwik, by which you actually don't have that much trouble with these laws. Well, how does Drupal fit into this? It's simply my CMS or CMF of choice. I don't know. Any of you use Drupal? No Drupal? You? Good. All right, cool. Cool. You like it too? I hope so. Will you come to Prague in end of September, DrupalCon? Prague. It's not the same venue as openSUSE conference, but it should be cool. Anyway, Prague is cool, I think. I was there in February and it was -18, so it's cool. Yeah, that's cold. Not necessarily cool. But you're from Finland, right? Yeah. What are you complaining? No, I was expecting something else. Ah, all right. maybe it should have gone a bit more south, like here. But, all right. What happened? It started with a cookie. No, actually it didn't. It started with personal information. And the fact that governments decided that they have to do something about regulating the amount of personal information that can be publicly available, and also the responsibilities of companies handling this personal information. Actually, since I am from the Netherlands, this mostly is derived from Dutch rules and regulations. But where specific Dutch anomalies occur, I will actually mention that. So mostly is actually applicable for the greater EU. Yeah. Just wait because of the recording here.
Just a question, since you are interested. Like closer? Okay. So yeah. So my question here is that as you are talking about the laws and especially within the EU countries, that what I have seen that the national laws have been kind of overruled with EU laws, and what I mean, it's not a bad thing, but I think instead of that's a good thing. And Dutch have been kind of a, how to say, the icebreaker there, that you have had a exceptional good laws that we have been following quite closely. I hope that Finland has done some good things also there. But anyhow, as you are talking, that are you reflecting to the only to the national laws or to the EU regulations as well?
I will absolutely focus on the European regulations, but since I'm a Dutch citizen having a Dutch company, I am affected mostly by the Dutch rules and regulations. But I will most definitely indicate when where the EU regulations stop and where the national implementation follows, because this should be a general talk and it should be applicable for most of the EU. With all EU regulations, it's always that there is a national implementation of these regulations, and sometimes this is a weaker implementation of the actual rule. But the interesting part about the cookie, or at least the privacy law, is that the Dutch implementation of it is so strict in a couple of manners, especially regarding cookies, that this has become one of the landmarks of a bit politicians trying to describe technology while not exactly understanding functional consequences of their actions. So, but I'll go into the presentation. I'll absolutely mention when I'm off the EU track and into the Dutch track. And welcome. Actually, we turn out to have quite a decent audience by now. That's good. All right, cookie law, or in the Netherlands, telecommunicatiewet. It basically makes a distinction when it comes to cookies about functional cookies and analytics cookies. Functional cookies can be anything you need to effectively run your business or your website, like search parameters, like user preferences. That's all right, as long as you simply maintain those cookies within your own domain, first party, and simply keep the information out of the directly identifiable information sorts. I'll go into identifiable information a bit later, and actually I'm going to turn on my screen again, which might help. Actually, this is actually where I think that politicians have made an interesting choice between, instead of choosing between personal information and functional information, they've chosen between functional information and analytics information, third-party information. I would think it would have made more sense if they simply made the distinction between personal identifiable information and everything else. Because that way you could, in your CMS or in your e-commerce platform, make a distinction between simply handling a shopping cart, filling it up, and only requiring personal information on exit. But this is the fact we have to live with right now, so I'm going to get into that. The assumption actually is that by default, analytics cookies do always contain personal information. And personal information in this matter is also IP addresses, browser identification strings, you name it. That is actually by law considered to be personal identifiable information to some extent. And in the Dutch implementation of law, it's actually up to the webmaster himself to prove that they do not try to track a user with that, which of course is pretty hard since we have a couple of million sites, but still. Functional cookies are legal as long as the user is informed about them. And this informing can be done through like a bar on top of the screen or some pop-up balloon saying like, hey, we use cookies. If you don't want that, then sod off, use another site. But you have to inform people about it. This is also mandated by law. Analytics are, and actually the distinction here is also that with a functional cookie, you simply have to inform the user, but with an analytics or personal identifiable cookie, you should ask for consent for usage. There is a big difference between that because you have to actively engage the user in communicating with your site. And this is actually when it became annoying, because actually most content management systems right now, if you take Drupal, Magento, WordPress, Joomla, you name it, yeah, well, they've got a session cookie. And the session cookie is attached to a lot of information which is stored on the server side. The session cookie by itself does usually not contain that much information. It usually contains a hash code identifying the session, but not exactly personally identifiable information. The information itself is stored on the server, and it can only be retrieved by making the match between the session of the user and the server. But actually, this is when the law says, all right, so you're storing personally identifiable information and you're using a cookie? Ooh, that must be bad. Fun part is also that, and I chose the NPO as an example here. Most of you will not be familiar with that, but that is the Dutch Public Broadcasting Agency, which is like the BBC in England. They have a big problem with this legislation because at one end they have an informative duty towards the general public. They have to give the general public the news information because they're required by the fact that they're a public broadcasting agency, but also law requires them that they should provide information about the usage of this information, actually having to demonstrate their validity. Because if nobody watches the public broadcasting agency or on television or wherever, why should we have one? Okay, this is a conflict of interest because also they wanted a little bit of targeted audience analytics. Actually, the government in the Netherlands demands from the public broadcasting agency that they also give indications as to which audience they target, which makes it pretty hard not to store personal information. Pretty much impossible, actually. All right, so far for the public broadcasting. Actually, just about any web shop or any site having any kind of registration or any kind of intelligence like CMS should have actually done the same. But because what the NPO did, they put a cookie wall in front of it. They simply said, screw it. Here is our entry point. You must accept or else we cannot let you on your site. Which kind of like defies the point of public information service. But, all right. It's also pretty nasty if you're an e-commerce owner whose only goal is like having your user buy a lot of stuff in one click. Adding one extra click usually is helpful with that. Also, and this is really interesting, by law, the website owner now has become responsible for all cookies set by the site, which also includes third party. So, and this brings up the data leakage issue. Personal data leakage is high on the agenda in European legislation right now, because if you leak personal data, you are actually required by law to make that public, that leakage. And actually, if you offer third-party services through your website, like LinkedIn for that matter, and LinkedIn gets hacked, which in the past couple of years has happened a couple of times, actually, the Dutch law says you are responsible as site owner because you chose to put the LinkedIn button and the LinkedIn cookie on your website and onto your user. Okay, this creates a really complex situation. So basically, more often with this kind of very technical legislation, not that many sites actually do implement it. All right, but the usual reaction to new legislation is enforce it, and enforcement can be done through penalties. Actually, but look at point 3 first, please, because no actual financial penalty is enforced right now. These penalties are, at this time, pretty much advisories. But there is a tendency that actually public naming and shaming is becoming more and more often when people are, or website owners experience data loss. They get publicized on the website from the Dutch government. And actually, the general thought is that as long as you keep shaming them, then they should better their lives. Actually, this is pretty valid. Let's not go into that. But actually, I am wondering about how about the usability penalties. Can we charge money for that to the politicians? I don't know. The trouble actually comes when in every EU country there is a different implementation of this legislation. So eventually it will probably get back to one more common denomination of the current rules and regulations of the individual countries. But wait, there's more. And I also promise we will have some demoing of Piwik later on, so you will see something moving on the screen. So stay awake. Actually, nowadays, the view of the Dutch government is not only that we have two types of cookies, namely functional and analytics cookies, but we also have first-party and third-party cookies. Great, more diversity. The actual idea behind that is that first-party cookies are probably only used internally in the company, and the idea of that is that actually the goal of these cookies is not gaining money by selling the actual personal information, like in third-party cookie circumstances usually is the case, like it's the whole business model of mostly Facebook or stuff like that. But first-party cookies are considered to be relatively harmless. So that's good, because actually, if you remember a couple of slides back, first-party cookies, functional cookies, well, you only need to inform the user about it. So actually, I think there could be a case made that first-party analytics cookies could actually be functional. Because as a business owner, my e-commerce platform needs a certain functionality or offers a certain functionality in which it stores the user data, because I actually need that for my shipment and stuff. Hey, the information just became functional. So actually, there is this change towards more pragmatism regarding the laws. And I also see this on a EU level. It's going towards pretty much a model of first-party cookies, not that bad, third-party cookies, root of all evil. Something like that. Here we go. The bigger picture actually is European privacy regulations. Remain standing, please. Actually, within the European Union, there's a really interesting discussion going on. It's summarized as the right to be forgotten, or the right to choose to be forgotten. And basically, it boils down to that the EU thinks that it would be in the interest of its citizens that they would have control over their data and not necessarily the company they once supplied some data to. Actually, what the discussion is moving towards is a mechanism, or at least registration, which makes it mandatory for companies to give you an information exit procedure. So that if you want your Facebook profile to be destroyed, then you should have the right to really have that destroyed and not have that data on that provider anymore. That's a philosophical discussion because actually it's pretty hard implementable in internet means. I mean, if a picture or text ever gets publicized, then yeah, well, it's gone. It's out of your control. But still, I think the general idea behind it is more like being able to demand from a company to at least give you the control back over your own identity. And I think that is important also in light of the recent Prism scandal, which Georg Grief did an excellent keynote about this morning, I think. Actually, the fact that you publish information on the internet by means of email, by means of Facebook, Twitter, or Google Plus, or whichever service you use, enables governments and third parties everywhere of creating a really, really, really detailed profile of you. And that is not necessarily a bad thing. I actually like, for instance, Amazon giving me relevant search results when I search for books. I think that's pretty handy. But there is a fine line between being handy and being steered. And this first feeling I can really appreciate. This second feeling, I'm sorry, it gets really heavy. This second feeling is a little less comfortable because I'm a bit of a, well, you know, person who at least likes to have the illusion of being in control of my own actions. And this kind of whole Prism thing simply means that nobody is anymore. You can absolutely pose the question if this has ever been in the past. I mean, in the past there were perfectly efficient organizations like the KGB and the FBI who already had fantastic information about everybody, but the fact that we're doing personal information exchange on such a massive scale as we're doing today, it's making it really easy for anybody who likes to eavesdrop. So the fact that the European Union, to get back on the relevant point here, is actually thinking about the digital rights of their citizens, I'm quite comfortable with that. And actually I think the current cookie law implementation is just the first step towards a more, well, usable, pragmatic approach. Well, you could, of course, say, well, I don't care. I use Google Analytics, and that's just what I use, so why bother? Yeah, okay, I don't know. Do you feel like you should comply with traffic regulations? I mean, do you feel like walking through the red light might be a very good idea? Well, if so, go right ahead. You maybe think that it's at least a decent thing to communicate with your users about the fact that you're using a third-party service. I think actually, basically, it should be a decent thing to communicate with your website users in a as transparent as possible way. I think every website should, to some extent, have a privacy statement. Like, hey, I'm visiting this website. What is done with my information? What is logged? Actually, on my personal website, I also have this little cookie thingamajig, which pops up first time somebody visits it. And it's at least give people a little bit notion of control. But all right, Google Analytics, it has been around in internet terms forever. Everybody uses it, so everybody will remain to use it. But for new customers, actually, I asked them, do you really want Google Analytics? Because you know, you have to ask consent for that. Most users, this comes as a shock. Most clients, this comes really as a shock. Why? Why? I'm only a simple web shop selling like baby stuff and cute little cuddly toys. Yeah, still, the law. But some actually think that they, well, just let it pass. They keep using Google, and so, well, fine by me. But still, think about something. Think about the ownership of the data yourself. Actually, being a shop owner means, at least meant in recent history, knowing your customer, personally then, knowing your customer to that extent that you could inform them about the choice of shoes, the choice of tie, if somebody feels the need to wear it in 30 degrees centigrade. Anything, basically. So actually, and this was in previous years, or decades also information you would acquire yourself through your sales channels and simply digest yourself. So, all right, maybe it's actually good business to remain having that information. And also, there could be, I actually have still to find one, but there could be a question you want to ask to your analytics database, which Google Analytics is not able to answer. Could be. But, all right, what will you actually do when this user presses no? Because the fun part is, you mostly will not know this user pressed no, because this information will never reach you. So you're missing a huge potential, actually, of information. And also, and I find this always the biggest plus side of open source software anywhere, what is your exit strategy? What in a couple of years, if there, maybe Google loses interest in one product, which with analytics is not that high of a chance, but still, it could happen. Then what? What do? Where's your data? What will you export? Will you export a couple of nice graphic PDFs and stuff, and then in 2 years' time you look at them and think like, yeah, I really wanted to know actually what that piece of the puzzle was. Yeah, well, actually there is quite a valid business case for open source statistics software anyway. So, in comes Piwik. It's actually a continuation of PHP My Visits. I don't know if any one of you have ever used that. Stick to not using it, please. It's built using the Zen framework, so which means it's basically pretty modern in that matter, in PHP words. It integrates fantastic with just about anything. Joomla, WordPress, and I'm even implementing it in a client environment in a SharePoint environment. You know, they're finding SharePoint statistics somewhat lacking. I don't know if anybody has ever used, oh, right, yeah, it's something like that. SharePoint 2007 basically does raw Excel exports of statistics, which hugely suck. So implementing Piwik is a very good idea then. Actually, it is pretty user-friendly, because I don't know, did you actually use the old open server-sided statistics stuff, like Webalizer, AW stats and stuff? Yeah, somebody did? All right, you're still living. Okay, cool. But did you actually get any practical question out of them? I mean, it usually meant like, oh, my site is visited like 1,000 times, but I haven't got a clue why and how and by whom. That's AW stats to me. But most importantly, it stores your data locally. It stores it in a local database. It's yours. And it's actually used by a couple of websites today. But, all right, what does it do? Well, it just about does everything, something like AW stats does, but with the cookies. So actually you can pretty much identify an individual user, which is, I think, good. It has click path, page-based, entry-exit pages. It even has e-commerce goals, targets, and stuff. You can just about create anything you can nowadays with Google Analytics. You can save searches. You have Drupal Commerce integration. Basically, anything Google Analytics does, at least anything Analytics does, which a normal user would use, Piwik also does. But then it looks really nice. Is that all? No. Next fun part, it can also parse server logs. And this I find really cool, because actually this is entirely legal by law. Server logs are static information, actually. So you can use it anyway. So even if a user clicks no, I don't want no cookies anyway. All right, fine, sure. I'll parse the server log. I still have some information. Of course, I won't misuse it, but still. It has a lot of really nice privacy-related options out of the box, like anonymizing IP addresses, purging, do not track is actually supported out of the box. Really nice. And for site managers and users, you have scheduled reports, mobile apps, you name it. Actually, these scheduled reports can be compiled or combined by the user themselves. So actually this is pretty much a webmaster's dream, because you can actually gift it to your site supporter, and it just works. Are there any alternatives? Yep, there are. You have Open Web Analytics, which pretty much does the same, but it's pretty old from a PHP point of view, actually. And it's not that much focused on the legal compliance issue. While Piwik is actually striving to comply with legal regulations, which actually makes it a valid tool. Yeah, I'll try to keep it up. You should give me a cord or something. You have CrawlTrack, which is also PHP based. It claims to do more than just analyze visitors, which makes me really suspicious, because I am a bit curious about the security one-size-fits-all, especially if it's written in PHP stuff. I like to use mod security to prevent hack attempts, actually, not tracking info. And then you have AWStats and Webalizer and Analog and W3 Perl. They're all Perl or C based, and actually they look like the control panel of Apollo 11, I think. I think mostly they suck. Especially in configurability. All right, Drupal integration. There were a couple of Drupal users in the room, so I have 10 minutes. All right, thank you. I need to invest more in glasses instead of bigger laptops. There is a module for that. What does it do? Well, the only thing you have to do is actually place some JavaScript in the template of your site, and off you go. This is actually what the module does. Actually, what the module also does is offer you the standard out-of-the-box reports inside the Drupal application, which is really nice. But you still need something like cookie control, another module, to be law compliant. I'm just going to click through a little bit faster than I was intending to first, but actually the default reports are what I'm going to show you next. So it's demo time. And in demo time, in this particular matter, I mean demo.piwik.org. Let me just check if my internet connection is still here. All right. If you log into Piwik or let a user log into Piwik, you get this overview. You get the dashboard. The dashboard, similar to Google Analytics, consists of a couple of reports. I don't know, is this visible for anybody or is it a bit fake? Yeah, all right. I'll just go through it. You have like visits over time, geo-IP mapping, browser mapping. You have real-time visits. The fun part is actually Piwik did invest in a welcome video. I love it. That's the kind of attention you want from a project, I think. Actually, the fun part is that this is individually loadable. It is user configurable. You can drag and drop the whole thing if you want to. You can also kick out a report. Are you sure? Of course. This should have included Clippy there somewhere. But if you want to add more, it's amazing what you can actually add. I will not go into it too deeply, but go to demo.piwik.org, click around, see what is possible. It is actually amazing. Like I said, it runs on MySQL, so you can install it next to your usual CMS. You don't have to invest in any kind of extra hosting or stuff. It also does SEO really well. Actually, the basic reports, visitors, you have the visitor log, which basically means who been at my site and who did something, with which device it is done, so you can base your responsive website strategy on that. Locations and internet provider, apparently. Well, interesting to know. Browser settings, also interesting. By which browser am I currently visited most? Well, as you can probably see, this is mostly an open source project with mostly open source enthusiasts. I think this shows really from the browser families. You can also see what the top visit times during the day are. You can see the level of engagement of your users, how many users stick around, look at more than one page, etc. Custom variables, which are of course not set in a demo version, but with any custom variable you can simply measure if you do a mailing, like you add this variable to the URL to your website, and you have the possibility of tracking which user came from which mailing to your site. This also is anonymous. You can see the actions a user undertakes, which pages are looked at. Really nice part also is that the Piwik module is also able to include the page titles. So not only the URL, but you get something actually readable. Because if you have a content management system like Drupal, you get like URLs like question mark, Q, node, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc. But now you get home or e-commerce. Exit pages, which is useful to see if a user leaves your site, and especially at what point. Here are the page titles actually. Outlinks, also interesting. If you do like affiliates with other websites or other platforms, then you can actually get some insight into which it actually works or not, which sites are being visited from your site, which is nice. If you have downloads, then you can also track them, of course. Referrers, also interesting. From search engines, which keywords are used to find your website, which keywords rank well in Google, but also which social media networks are responsible for traffic towards your website, which is really interesting if you do campaigns. You have a question in between?
Just about the location. Just about the location knowledge what you are gathering there. That if you would be interested to know better that which parts of the, let's say, the Netherlands, for example, as the IP address is usually tracked by the country. But if you are interested that which part of the Netherlands the user is coming, have you ever been able to do that?
Actually, that depends on the GeoIP plugin you use, because you can use several GeoIP plugins. Also, what you can do, out of the box, use a standard GeoIP service. But if you want, you can, of course, export the IP range from Piwik implementation, parse it through a GeoIP function, and you get that information. So importing and exporting is really nice. I'm actually going to wrap it up, because actually most of the time has been spent, I think. But I'm going to see just one more thing, because Piwik has also a migration strategy. There are really nice tools migrating from like Google Analytics towards Piwik. It's really functional, it works really well. You can also import log files from your server, so actually you do not have to start from scratch with Piwik. You can actually take over your old implementation and your old data and run from there, which is actually really useful if you want to do trend analysis over a longer period of time. Here we go. Questions? Let's do them afterwards, because I think my time is up. If I look at the back. We have some time. Then I'll do some questions. Good. I'll just walk around, have some exercise. It's good for me.
Does Piwik works per site, or we can install Piwik and then register 2 or 3 of our sites and keep track of them just with one instance?
I understand. The question, I think, is can I use Piwik, one Piwik instance with 1 or more sites? The question is absolutely. Piwik, you can connect an instance to one website to keep it a first-party citizen in case of the cookie legislation, but also you can install Piwik on a like sub domain of your website, and you have like 10, 20,000 websites connecting through them. Also, it has pretty nice user access control lists features, which can separate the access towards data per site. So you can also use it as an ISP for your user as a replacement of a WStats, for instance. Does that answer your question? Good. Anything else? You have a question? Cool.
You mentioned reading server logs. I wanted to ask, is it possible to do it automatically? I guess it is. And will it somehow detect duplicates from server logs via the cookies or page visits?
Actually, you import the server log in a different result set than your actual cookies. So it's separate data. Anything else? All right. I hope that's because of the amount of information I have supplied you and not because of the lack of interest. I assume the first. Cool. All right. Well, I think nothing more here. Thanks for staying. If you want to know more about me, then look there. If you don't, that's fine as well. Have a great time. Have a great conference. And I see you around. I hope it was worth waiting for. All right, cool. You like it?
Yeah, I didn't get to see much.
Oh, you were in a bit late. All right.
Yeah.
If you want, I'll send it to you.
I use only these webmaster tools, but they're I think pretty passive, like just from the search result which they have anyways.
I think so too. And I think they're completely user or Google centric. Well, as the plus side of Piwik is it simply harvests anything from anything. But actually the most fun part about Piwik is I think the fact that you are able to execute custom queries or custom visualizations on the data that you actually have acquired. And I think that is absolutely fantastic because that's yeah, you've got the raw data, you take a different visualization tool and simply parse it through. It's fantastic.
Yeah, is something from away.
Yeah.
She has her own website for her paintings.
Oh, cool.
She sometimes comes to me and wonders, hey, can you have a look at your logs and who and where and when and how? And
All right, cool. But you are pretty savvy with web tools, right?
yeah, most of the time.
Yeah. All right. If you need any help installing it, please drop me a line. All right?
So I just grab Piwik, I guess, and read the logs.
Exactly. Put it on the hosting environment, integrate it with the template. That's it. But if you have a question, then please ask. All right?
Yeah.
Cool.
No problem.